Okay, great. So I'm going to get started today. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar, Women in Energy. We're very excited to talk about this very important issue in Africa. As a member of the Equal by 30 initiative, Africa Oil and Power and the African Energy Chamber are really committed to empowering women and to making sure that there is gender diversity throughout the value chain in the energy sector in Africa. So I'm going to get started today by taking care of a couple housekeeping items. For all of our attendees joining us today, we would encourage you to chat amongst each other in the chat box. You'll see that box kind of on the bottom bar of your screen. Please note if you want to talk to all the panelists and all the attendees that you need to change the to tab to say all panelists and all attendees. And that way you can chat amongst each other about the topics we're discussing today. There is also a Q&A box that you'll see. If you click on that Q&A box, I will be monitoring the Q&A box for questions from the audience, and I will be interjecting periodically with those questions. And before I turn the webinar over to my co-moderator, Liz, I just wanted to share some statistics from the Women in Energy in Africa and around the world. Women make up 15% of the world's oil and gas workforce and 17% in power and utility sector. In Africa and the Middle East, that number is a bit lower. Women make up 9% of senior management positions and less than 8% of technical jobs. So obviously we have a lot of work to do, right, Liz, in terms of empowering women and making sure all of the policies and from the private sector and the public sector are in place to make sure that that is a priority. So with that, I'm going to turn the webinar over to my co-moderator, Elizabeth Rogo. Liz is the owner of Savo Oilfield Services in Kenya, and she's also president for East Africa for the African Energy Chamber, and we're really honored to have her here today. So Liz, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce the panelists and to get the conversation started.
Thank you very much, Katie, and thank you for all the attendees. I'm really excited with this wonderful group of ladies that you'll get to meet. In fact, we've just had an exciting discussion before we came on live. As Katie introduced the statistics on women in energy, I'd just also like to add that I was recently appointed the director for Kenya Power, and it was a very unusual appointment because we now have 4 women out of 13 heading a board, a state corporation board, which is very rare in this part of Kenya. But those are some of the facts, and as you can see, things are improving. So the topic today, as we said, is women in energy, and we want to basically try and understand why we have a scarcity, why we still have a scarcity of women in the oil and gas, and why there's this big movement and organizations such as Equal by 30 who are pushing it. And we have companies within Africa who have joined this this major movement in bringing more women in, equal pay and more women. So I'd like to take this opportunity to ask each of our wonderful guests, our wonderful panelists that are here, Mirelle, Toulekima, Khadijah, Oluseun, as well as Selma, who will then introduce themselves, and I think it would be nice for you to hear from them. And then we'll go in and ask them some pertinent questions. We'd also like to encourage the participants to come in anytime with any relevant questions that you may have. This is going to be a very free-flowing discussion. We estimate between 1 hour 15 thereabouts. So without further ado, I'd love to hear from my sister in Australia, who is Cameroonian by birth, and who I've had the pleasure of knowing. And this is Mirelle Toulekima.
Toulekima. So thank you, Liz, and it's a pleasure to be here to talk about one of the major problems in the industry, which is the gender imbalance. So my name is Mirelle Toulekima. I'm based in Perth, Australia. I'm the managing director of MT Energy Resources, a company that I co-founded, but now I'm leading the company. I've been in the oil and gas industry for 20 years now. I started in Gabon, where I'm from, And I've worked internationally, started working with Shell for quite some time, and then Woodside here in Australia, Santos in Australia, and I've worked in South Africa for Sasol as well before starting, you know, in this consultancy space. And I'm really looking forward to have the discussion and to really interact with the co-panelists today.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And we have another great and inspiring young sister, Khadijah Bar, who has a beautiful backdrop, and we're very jealous of her in Abu Dhabi. Khadijah, please introduce yourself.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank everybody who are watching us and participating with us in this webinar. Thank you, Lisa. I'm actually, my name is Khadijah, and as you can see, I'm not that much old. I'm trying to remain that young, but I have an experience in the oil and gas industry since I started from 2007, 2008, yes, let's say. So I am the executive chairman of Dermon Oil and Gas that I have actually established from the UAE. And we are actually in other countries, like in the Asian Pacific region, in Europe as well, and Africa as well. So my parkour is just my parkour. Let's say it's a bit different because I'm from Senegal and I did my studies in Montreal, and then I wanted to check check what I wanted to do. So I got an internship. I went to BP Calgary for some times, and then I went back to Montreal, and I decided that I wanted to work in the oil and gas industry, which is the reason why today I'm here in Abu Dhabi, and I've been actually working in Technip Abu Dhabi and Schlumberger Middle East until in 2015, when I just established Dermon Group and in the core business, which is Dermon Oil and Gas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Khadijah. Next, we have Oluseun, and she will help me with her name, Solanke, and she's from Nigeria. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good day, everyone. My name is Oluseun Solanke from Nigeria, as Liz said. Thank you for the opportunity. Really excited to be able to speak about a topic that I have a lot of passion about. I have about 20 years in the industry. Similar to Mirelle, I started off with Shell 20 years ago in the UK, working the North Sea. And then I moved over to a French company. It was called Gaz de France, then it's now called Engie. I was there for about 7 years in the UK, and then I was in Paris for 2 years. And then there was an urge to return to the motherland, and I returned to Nigeria in 2013, and I have been in Oando since then, happily so. I am a technical professional. I am a reservoir engineer. It's what I've always done. And I think it brings and I have, moved into leadership in that field as a technical professional. And it's very interesting because as the statistics Caty shared earlier, not many of us survive as technical professionals into senior leadership. So it's very interesting to share my own perspective on the issues at hand today. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And last but not least, Selma Usiku. And I just told Selma that her last name means night in Swahili. Selma from Namibia, please go ahead.
Sorry, Selma, I think, can everybody hear Selma, or is it just me?
No, we can't hear her.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, now we can hear you. Yes.
My apologies. Thank you so much, Liz. I was just saying how honored and excited I am to have this conversation with such experienced ladies in the industry. As Liz said, I am based in Windhoek, Namibia. I am the exploration geologist for Azinam, which is a Seacrest-backed company, an E&P company, focused on exploration in Southwest Africa. And prior to joining the company in 2014, so compared to everyone else, I'm really in industry diapers still. But I worked for Brazilian oil and gas company, also exploring for oil and gas in Namibia, called HRT. I was a geologist there. I hold a BSc from Rhodes University in South Africa for geology and environmental sciences. And I did my postgraduate training at the Royal Holloway University of London, where I had a master's in petroleum geoscience. So in the few years I've been in the industry, I have served as secretary of the Namibian Petroleum Operators Association, that is NAMPOA. And that's a forum that represents all oil and gas exploration companies in the country. And that enables effective communication on several issues between the government of Namibia and the companies. Part-time, I am a television show host. I host a live talk show called Tupopieni, which also discusses not oil and gas issues, but social issues in the country. So this particular topic is close to my heart as well. Thank you so much, Liz.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So let's dive into a couple of questions. So I wanted to start off with this first question. What role are women playing in the development of small and medium enterprises in Africa? And how do you expect this to evolve in the coming years, and how can it be encouraged? Mirelle, what's your opinion? Have we lost Mirelle?
Mirelle, you're on
No,
mute.
I was muted. Thanks, Liz, for this question. I mean, women have actually a key role in the, in the small and medium enterprises. And, but the key problem is that they actually are in markets where there's not a key influence. And I think that's why we are here. I mean, it's more in retail, and a lot of, the businesses are actually in informal as well. So there's quite a gap here, and a lot of factors are actually making this happening. First of all, I mean, the access to capital is not easy for a lot of women, especially in Africa. So that's one thing. There's also, all the weight that they have, especially when they have families, and even if they don't have children from themselves, the extended family that they have to carry with them is also one thing. And if we can open up, this open up this market to them, I think the impact will be huge, because, as you know, I mean, it's a fair amount of people that we are talking about. I mean, it's mostly half of the population in Africa, so you don't want to leave them behind, because that's a fair amount of contribution to the economy. So yes, I think it's something that we have to focus on. We're not there yet, but I mean, there needs some improvement. There needs some regulation to be put in place. There are strategies that we have to look at, taking into account the cultural background and the social the social environment, so that we can make it work.
So if I look at it more from the energy or the oil and gas sector, do you still see the same issues that women are facing in these SMEs?
And I think it's even worse when you talk about the oil and gas sector, because I mean, being yourself, in the market there, it's hard, because not only there's not a lot of women, and so women don't really, it starts actually with women themselves, where they think that, they can't actually make it into this sector, which is male dominated. So it starts with the mindset first, and then there's also the cultural background. So all the, the responsibility that they have, which is quite, especially when you become a mother. And I've seen it, because when I became a mother, I was working in Africa. It's very difficult to actually have, continue to focus on your career and on your children. And I still remember the day that I announced to my boss that I was pregnant. It was like a bombshell for him. It's like, why? Because I was a graduate, and after 2 years, I announced that. It's like, it's too early, and you're not going to focus on your work anymore. And so all those, all those things are coming up, where they people think that because you're going to start a family or because you are a woman, at some point when pressure is going to come in, because there's a lot of pressure that you have to deal with in this industry, you're not going to be able to manage that, which is completely, I think, wrong. I mean, this is an assumption that's not been verified, but it's up, you know, to the woman to prove that, you know, they are capable. And there's also the education that the education system doesn't actually open those options as well to women. And so they tend to go to traditional path that they think that women should go to, and that's not helping. And then you come into when you really have the information and you want to start a business in this industry, it becomes really difficult because it's about who you know. And as you know, I mean, because it's obviously very male dominated, you tend to be a minority and not have access to the opportunity that can actually help you to start your business, but most importantly, to push and grow your business. So I think it's still very, very difficult for women to make it really in the African context, as far as SME and when we talk about SME in the oil and gas industry.
Thank you. I know there's some other very important points that you brought up that we're going to discuss about motherhood and things like that. And this is the same question I'd like to pose to Khadijah, because, you know, Khadijah, I think she's the baby amongst all of us in this group. So to see somebody as young as her actually go in and start a company, not just in Senegal, but is sitting in Abu Dhabi at her age, this is very inspiring. Khadijah, tell us a little bit about what made you take that direction.
Thank you very much, Liz, for this question. What made me had taken this decision to be in the actually, first of all, I wanted to be in the commodities market. So in the commodities, we're talking also about anything related to precious metals, precious stones, mining, and also oil and gas. So what really just made the click is the fact that when I had my first internship, as I said, in BP Calgary, I was very interested. So I went back to my family in Senegal, and I told them that I would like to go to oil producing countries actually, and further my studies there, and at the same time working and trying to get as much as possible some more experience in this industry. Of course, it took me few times, almost a year, to convince my parents, who was like, there is no way that you're going to leave Montreal to go and go to another country and do all this, because in Senegal we don't have oil and gas, as you were saying. But as I can say, that is the thing is that I had a very big influence coming from my brother, because my brother has always been interested in the downstream. He was actually putting me into this industry by asking me some questions, and I was following up, and I was following up with him what project he wanted to do. He just wanted to do having the downstream, having actually some refineries, bringing some crude oil or refined product in Senegal and trying to expand it, and also all those things in the downstream. So I got this influence from my brother, and I was also reading all his newsletters, and here we go. And then actually, after negotiating with my parents and then I accepted, I came to UAE. But I had to come through schools and Paris University, Abu Dhabi. So that's how it all started. So at the same time, since I was late for 1 year, I had the opportunity actually to get in what is the name? Technip Abu Dhabi at this time. So I had the chance to enter, but I started with finance department. So it's very huge, this oil and gas industry, because you have the upstream, you have the midstream, you have the downstream. So first of all, what was interesting for me, it was to see all the functional department supporting the department that we will call such as HR, such as finance, and you will have the heart of the company, which will be about the people who will be actually on the down, who will be on the rigs, working in drilling, in measurement, and all those things on the rigs. So I had the opportunity to have good mentors. That's the point. I had good mentors in each company that I went through, and they believed in me. They believed that, and when I was telling them in Senegal we have oil and gas, most of them, they didn't believe me, but I truly believed that we had. So I was preparing myself for this opportunity that I was seeing, and I was feeling through my brother who influenced me. So I had the mentors who believed in me, who trained me, and then I was also doing my master. When I was doing my master as well, Schlumberger Middle East contacted me, so it was very difficult to combine the studies at the same time and working as well, because when I was doing my master, I was going to Schlumberger from 8 in the morning until they gave me until 4, because I had 6 months to finish my masters, you know. And the 6 until 10, I was in my masters and doing this all the housework. So it was a very tough situation, but I believe it really shaped me and made me who I am today and what I represent to some woman of my age, or some older or younger woman. Anyway, woman in general. So that's how it all happened, and I can say that I will say thanks why I'm here, because actually, as I said, the mentor, but the education. Yes. The education, which is very essential. It's very essential. And then when you have this education, you need to practice it. So if you have the education and you don't have any practice, you will not be able to know exactly what is on the ground really, because theory and practice is different. So that's how actually things started to add it up with me, and very quickly, because I was learning fastly, I was carrying things fastly, and then I started to just upgrade, and thanks to God, my mentors was there, and then I've been working a lot. And Schlumberger is, I can say, one of the best schools to really teach you and put you in any kind of situation, invest in the youth. When you are in the department, and then you will move from day to day. There's no, in this industry, what I love, it's not the daily routine. It's not a daily routine when you are young.
So we'll talk a little bit more about that, Khadijah, and we'll talk about whether Schlumberger is the best, because some of us are not Schlumberger. We came from Baker Hughes or Weatherford, so that's another debate. But you hit on a point, which is what I'd like us to move on, is education. And Oluseun, something really clicked with me when you said, with this wonderful education that you got, not only scholastically, but in terms of your work environment, you decided to come home. And that really reverberated with me, because that's basically the same path that I took. But just let us look a little bit about education, and how it can be better prioritized with women, and what policies should be put in place to make this a reality.
Thanks for asking me this.
I'll talk to Oluseun. Sorry, yeah, okay.
Sorry, okay.
Right.
So I'll just make this a bit personal. My friends and I were running a poll. I'm a mother, so I have an army of domestic staff at home, and so do my friends, because that's how we manage. Yeah. And we're running a poll because I found out that one of my domestic staff, a female, not read or write, right? And the other one could not read or write either, the nanny. She couldn't tell her triangle from her circle. But we found out that our male domestic staff could read and write, the drivers, the security guards. And I checked with all my friends, and this was a commonality. So it's right there in front of us. The main problem we have about not having enough women in the industry is an inflow problem. We just do not have enough women going into STEM programs, which is science, technology, engineering and mathematics. We just don't have enough women who are interested in these programs. About the Boston Consulting Group published a study in 2017 on gender parity in oil and gas industry. And they found that post-secondary, that 54% of post-secondary scholars are female. However, you just have 27% in STEM subjects. So why is this? So we see that, okay, so women are about half who being educated, but they represent a smaller percentage of people who go into STEM. So first of all, like I was trying to tell you from my personal experience in my home, women are not getting the opportunity to get as educated as men for cultural reasons in Africa, which I'm sure we'll touch upon as we discuss today. And additionally, they're not attracted to STEM. And the reasons put forward by the study is that perhaps traditionally women have not, the imagery, the ideas about the industry have been quite macho-centric. If you Google the oil and gas or energy industry today, you'll see images of men, rigs looking dirty, perhaps in environments where people, culturally, women are not, encouraged to enter. Although these are changing, this is changing with companies like I work for Oando, and this is changing. And one of the ways we are contributing to that change is representation. So you've seen this done also with issues of race, where it's become understood that when people see other people who are like them doing things, and which is what, one of the reasons I came back home, these young African ladies need to see people who look like them, who have similar backgrounds to them, being able to do these things. It can change what their abilities, their ideas of what they think their own abilities and ceilings are. An example of an initiative that my company does through its foundation, Oando Foundation, is to offer mentorship to schools. So Oando Foundation is very focused on the girl child. And what we do on special events like International Women's Day or Men in Engineering Days, we go to the schools we adopt, we talk to the young girls, we tell them our stories, we play games, we offer one-on-one mentorship, and we can actually see the light go up in their eyes. So we do things like that. So I think representation and changing the ideas people have about the industry is very important, because we can see it's changing. Women are getting into education. There's still a lot of work to do there, but even so, we have to let them know that STEM is open for them.
So in fact, now that you touched on STEM, and it's a question I'm going to bring up to Mirelle, because she has a very interesting perspective with the Aboriginal girls in Australia. But what influenced you, Oluseun? In the case of Khadijah, her brother was a big influence besides other men. What influenced you into going into reservoir engineering, for example?
For me, I mean, my influence was actually my dad, because my dad was actually a mechanical engineer, and he believed in science, and more in a sense that, science was going to help me to have a good job. And that was really the narrative that he had, is that, if you really want to study, I encourage you to do science, to do mathematics, because that's where all the, the good jobs and the well-paid jobs are going to be. And he was seeing it more on economic empowerment, from an economic empowerment point of view. And he was right. And that's really what I'm doing as well with, all the mentee and young girls that, I mentor. I actually, through my career, branch out to STEM, and I started an NGO in Uganda with a young Ugandan woman who is a pilot, so that we could start to talk to girls at school, primary school, and also secondary school, to get them, to make sure they are familiar with STEM, they are familiar with, engineering, oil and gas, whatever, those non-traditional industry where men are the majority, so that they understand that they can do it, and there's no, you know, barrier for them to go into it and excel into it. And we also bring, and that's what my colleague was saying, is that they also bring, you know, role models, because it's important that they see people that look like them, so that they can be inspired, motivated, because if they can see it, they can do it. And they know that if they can see it, they can do it. So we have to go out. And that's why I go out. I share my story from the humble beginning to where I am right now, so that they understand that it's not impossible. Somebody has done it, they can do it. And whatever, you know, whatever obstacle, whatever challenges that they have to go through, they need to understand that it all comes down to their determination and education, because you know, the facility are there in some countries where they can, you know, study and get into those get, you know, involved and start to have a career there. But I think what I've seen so far, because I started back, you know, in 96 in the industry, I think back then.
Mirelle, just before you go there, before you extend, let me bring Selma first of all into the conversation.
Okay, yeah.
Just we'll delve in a little bit deeper, because as we said, we're still on education and who influences one to get into these STEM. So Selma, who comes from Namibia, that's not known as an oil and gas country yet. Selma, what was your influencing factor there as a petroleum geoscientist? You're mute. I think we'll leave you on. Okay.
Apart from the obvious fact that Namibia is a resource-rich country, so the choice to do natural sciences was really a process of elimination. It was a personal passion for myself, but also I knew in some way that I would contribute to the economic development of my country. But I think more importantly, and interestingly, there's a socio-political motivation behind it, because our founding father, the first president of the free Namibia, Dr. Sam Nujoma, was extremely passionate about the resources in his country. And as you may know, Namibia's political history was extremely difficult. I mean, the apartheid regime, or the pre-independence of Namibia, you know, that regime not only focused on racial discrimination and segregation, it certainly impacted the types of employment that were accessible to the majority of Namibians who were Black. And you know, I'm still in my 30s, but even I was born at a time where the apartheid government saw the education system as a major vehicle for the propagation of its beliefs. The belief that manual and menial jobs were deemed only suitable for a certain race. And that only really created the first barrier for the majority of Namibians to participate in the you know, economy's priority sectors. So the legacy of the apartheid policies persisted for a very long time. And because of that, even the generation before us, women made up the majority of the workforce in health and social work and education, and really energy and science, they were non-existent. But our founding father realized that, you know, we had won the political fight, but, you know, economic emancipation needed to start with its people taking ownership of its natural resources. And the best way is to encourage training and education and understanding of how to manage the natural resources. And he made so many profound statements and speeches at the beginning of his tenure to encourage especially the young people, because, you know, they knew they wouldn't be here for much longer, but the future was young and the future was female. And it was quite encouraging. He always wanted to see young Namibians, and especially women, running science programs and really motivating us to go into science and technology, and STEM for that matter. He himself, I think at the age of 70 something, got a master's degree in geology, and I think that paved the way the understanding that you have a role model, a fellow Namibian who didn't have the opportunities to even study these courses is now at the forefront. And it's someone you know, somebody you can relate to. The doors opened immediately. And I was just one of many young people who took that message and ran with it. And yeah, geology became, you know, first choice. And although there was no oil and gas industry, those who understand the geology of the conjugate margins of South America and West Africa, it's really that knowledge that inspired, I guess, many oil and gas exploration companies to try and explore for oil and gas in Namibia. And it's just the opportunity given to me by the Brazilian oil and gas company, who said, we're looking for young people, Namibians only. They weren't coming in with, you know, expatriates. They wanted to look for Namibians who didn't necessarily have any specific training, which is obvious because there was no oil and gas industry. They, you know, took a risk. They trained us. They made sure that they shared their knowledge, and they gave us that opportunity, which we grabbed with both hands. It hasn't been an easy journey, but I think taking initiative and grasping opportunities given to us that the generation before us was you know, not lucky enough to have, really made the biggest difference. And it's up to us to make the next generation take the baton one step further.
I think this is a really good segue to bring in my colleague, Caty, to give us some. I think it would be nice for us to hear what the participants are asking. Go ahead, Caty.
So I'm going to go first. We asked a poll when we were talking to Mirelle about SMEs, and the question was, do women have equal access to funding as their male counterparts for SME development in the energy sector in Africa? And 85% of respondents said no. So I'm not going to get necessarily into the issue of funding, because I think we've kind of addressed that, and we have a lot of topics we want to get into. But what I want to talk about, or what I'm going to ask about, a question from the audience, is this idea of you know, equal access to mentors, equal access to funding, equal access to education. We've been talking about this a little bit. And so one question specifically is, you know, what advice do you have for women who do not have access to influential mentors? Each and every one of you have talked about your mentors, your colleagues, your father, your brother, people who have really encouraged you in this industry. And that seems to be a resounding theme from everybody, is the importance of having those mentors in your life. So if you don't have it, you know, a really encouraging father or son or mother, or, you know, what advice do you have for somebody that is lacking those mentors and maybe also lacking connections? Maybe there's another question, somebody talking about they have an education, but they can't seem to make any connections. Like, so what advice do you have on that realm? And maybe, maybe Khadijah, would you like to start us off?
Khadijah, you're mute. Khadijah's muted.
Hello,
okay.
yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. So thank you for this question, Caty. What I would like to say is that you have in this industry, which is mainly dominated, you have to be very bold, first of all. You have to be bold. You have also to be mentally strong and know actually what you want, where you are going, and being focused on where exactly is the point that you want to reach in this industry. This industry is not only mainly dominated, but it's very intimidating as well. So if as a woman, you want to be there and want to do like a man, it's not gonna work. You have to be like a woman and be mentally strong. This is very important as a woman to survive there. Having also the mentor, having mentors who have spent 40 years, some 30 years, some others 30 years. So how many hundred of years that you have around you? So it's something that also is important. But I understand when you say that it's not easy to get into those kind of industry because it's very close. But then it's close, yes, I do agree with everyone saying that. But then, as I said again, boldness and personality showing that you really want to do and get into this industry. I remember when they wanted to give me internship, they bring me all the internship and other industry. I said, no, I want to be in the oil and gas industry. And I stayed and I waited to be until they found it for me in the oil and gas industry. So you need to know what you want. You need also to focus on that. It's not closed. It's not closed in the way that you can get into, but as I said, the personality is very important.
Yeah, Katy, if I may, I mean, that's a really good point you've made. I mean, Oluseun, you as a reservoir engineer, what have you faced? I think Mirelle and myself can really relate with what you've gone through.
Well, you know, it was interesting when starting off going on a field, you know, if you go out to the field, you have to go offshore. Of course, when you're the company man for the first time, I can see Selma nodding. That's always a bit intimidating. I had imposter syndrome the first time I had to have my meeting. You know, it can be quite intimidating. You can also make the mistake of second guessing yourself. You know, you've gone to school, you have the certificate, but you know what's right, and you get into it, you know, intellectually technical debates with colleagues, and some of them, unfortunately, will try to intimidate you because of your gender. I know I lost some mental battles at the start of my career, less and less these days. So yes, there are challenges, but I want to answer the question, the original question, if you could give me a minute, about, you know, what happens if you don't have access. I believe we can all make access these days. The world has changed a lot, the world is more connected. You have to be creative, you have to innovate. You know, there's LinkedIn, there's social media, attending events like this, online events. You know, if anyone wanted me to mentor them, you know, I'll be happy to, and I'm sure similarly some members of the panel. So you really have to, there's a push and pull. You may have to do a bit more of the pulling if you find yourself, you know, not being able to have access naturally to mentors.
Katy, just before you go to that question, I just wanted, Mirelle and myself, we've been in the industry for 20 years, and I would say, Khadijah, I'm not going to say it's easier for you now, but it was very tough. It was very tough for when we were coming in, because we had no role models. We kind of stepped in it by accident. Oluseun, I know you're younger than we are. So, Mirelle, what can you give us just a tidbit?
Yeah, I think it's when we started back then, you know, and you're right, it was tough because you couldn't find somebody who looked like you. And I know that Oluseun was talking about the imposter syndrome. I mean, it's just kicking in because you feel like you don't belong. You feel like, you know, nobody is paying attention to you. But, you know, I agree with Khadijah is that you have to look at yourself. You have to look at yourself, know what you want, understand, you know, what are your strengths, what are your gaps, and when you have gap, you have to find mentors to help you. And yes, you know, some people will say, yeah, but I don't know anybody. And then it means that you have to do the work. You have to be strategic. If you have to go and sit and, you know, identify all the single event that's going to happen in your company or in your country or anywhere, list them and try to have access. I know sometimes, you know, it can be very expensive, but list the ones that are free, go there. And when you're there, you know, ask questions to be able to be noticed and to just, you know, connect with people, because, you know, coming into the industry, your education and your technical knowledge is going to bring you to a certain level. To go to a higher level, you will need those connections, you will need those sponsors, you will need those mentors, and it's up to you to do the work. Just like, you know, in uni, you do research, so it's the same with the network. You have to look at the industry, who is influential, who is not, and find a way to access them, either by, you know, working on a project where you know that you're going to be visible, or directly, being involved in those events, asking questions, or going boldly and asking some people, if they can help you, if they can support you. The only thing that they can say is no, and then no is no, you're still at the same level, so you continue. But don't be scared. Don't be scared, really. Don't, get stuck into this imposter syndrome or playing the victim, because if you play the victim, it's not going to help you at all in this industry where, like Khadijah was saying, you have to be bold, you have to know who you are, and you want to know what you want.
I'll say that you're all very beautiful women, and let's cut to the chase. This industry, you can come across quite a number of creeps, and I think it's especially when you work in operations in the field. I think so. But I'd like to hear from Selma. I mean, I think Khadijah made a good point. You must be a woman in this.
Right.
Most people think you must be a man, okay? But you must be a woman. Selma, what's your opinion on that? And how have you navigated this, where you're seen as maybe just this beautiful woman and she doesn't have much between her ears?
Yeah, absolutely. That is a very real bias. And, first of all, I'm a small person. When people look at me, they just think I need help with everything. I don't come across necessarily as a confident and physically able person. So when I walk onto that rig for the first time in 2012, as the only female on the rig of over 40 men, obviously the imposter syndrome came in. I had all this training, but it was my first time actually physically on the ground. I had been given words of encouragement. I have been told to just stand on my own and, learn as much as I can. That's exactly what I'm there for. So initially, I couldn't even fit in the PPE. Nothing is built and designed for a woman. I had to sleep in an awkward bunker because, they're usually set in pairs and I can't share a room with a male person. So I was sort of, in a corner somewhere. There were so many things that made me feel uncomfortable. But one thing that I did learn was, first of all, the mentorship that you get doesn't necessarily have to be within the industry. Namibia doesn't have an oil and gas industry. For me to find, there are many great women in leadership roles who do work there now, but at that time, there were actually very few. But I think if you look for somebody who you have identified, who has overcome odds in their own industry, who has really maintained and committed integrity in their work, who has overcome all sorts of challenges in unconventional circumstances, who is focused on their personal development, that's something you can learn from, not necessarily in the oil and gas sector. And it's those principles that you can take with you. And secondly, I think, as Khadijah said, be a woman, be strong-minded, and simply do the work. If you are committed to your work and your standard is on par, the mentors will find you, the respect will find you. You won't necessarily have to man up to get to that level. I think if we just believe in ourselves and believe that we are capable of achieving the same level of work, and sometimes even better, the imposter syndrome will eventually fade away. But it's real, it's there. And even today, after being, 8 years in the industry, when I'm in a meeting and, there are men on the table, I have to remember to raise my voice instead of just nod, instead of just agree. I need to let my voice be heard, be noticed, as Mirelle said. And I think those are just principles you practice until you become a leader eventually.
And don't serve coffee and cookies, please do
exactly.
not.
Don't accept to take minutes because it's not your job.
But I don't know if I trust men to do it as well as we do. So
let's not like being sexist in reverse, though.
Yeah, that was a joke.
My fiance is a much better chef than I am. So I kind of wanted to follow up on this, actually, Liz, if I can interject, because I kind of
go ahead.
A little light bulb, and I'm feeling actually a bit embarrassed that I don't have a man on the panel now. And so, as the person who put together the panel, my apologies, because I in a male-dominated industry, from the field up to the executive level suite, what is the role of men in mentoring women in making sure that this is an issue, right? So I mean, like, and again, this is probably a better question for a man maybe, but from the female perspective, where do men come in on this issue?
That's a very good question. It's a very valid one. Maybe we can start with Oluseun. Khadijah, you follow?
I actually think any woman in business or professional career should consider having a male mentor. You shouldn't have only one mentor. And amongst the mentors you need to have is a male mentor, because they help you to provide a different perspective than a man would. In my organization in Oando, we actually have a mentorship program that is not gender focused. So in selecting your mentor, it doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, because I'm a woman and I'm choosing a woman. So, and it has been the same as well in my previous employment. So consequently, most of my mentors have been men. Most of my mentors have been men, and I think it has been a very rewarding experience for me. And even informal mentorships, like from CEOs, CEOs, my current CEO, my current general manager, everyone has been, has mentored me, nurtured me, support me. And I think it just comes back to what you were saying previously, is that if you do the work, and I cannot stress this enough, I know we've said it, but we can keep saying it. If you do the work and you just keep performing, you will have a lot of support from men and women alike, who will mentor you and want to see you grow.
Okay. Khadijah, before we go to you on the mentor, I just wanted, before we lose out on that poll, Caty. Caty had a poll that you took?
Sorry, say again. Oh, poll, yeah. So
yes.
This kind of gets into a different question a bit. And I was actually, I'm as a mother, I'm very surprised by these results. So for the audience, I have a 2-year-old, and so when COVID hit, at least here, schools closed. So I was working from home with my 2-year-old, and I don't know if anybody's ever has a lot of experience with 2-year-olds, but it was a very chaotic, very stressful time in my life trying to work and also, manage her here. So we asked, if you are a working parent, how has COVID-19 impacted your career prospects in terms of your ability to focus on work and childcare availability, etc. And before I share our personal results, which makes me think that Africa is doing better than the world on the whole, I was looking a study. So McKinsey just came out with a survey on this that showed 1 in 4 women are considering either downshifting at work, so going part-time or something like this, or leaving the workforce altogether during COVID because of this issue. So from 1 in 4, we're like 25% of women have been pretty impacted. So our poll, I guess it's about the same. So 25% said they were negatively impacted, 29% said positively, and 46% said no impact. So this is kind of a broader question that for me really became relevant during COVID. But what, for mothers, I think traditionally women do most of the housework. They take on most of the childcare responsibilities. During COVID, we've seen that even working moms were typically the ones that managed most of the remote learning or most of the most of the day-to-day responsibilities. They missed more meetings, right? So I mean, what is, how can these issues, and you hate to call motherhood an issue, right? That's part of the problem if you're looking at it like it's an issue. But I mean, how can this be mitigated, right? What are the answers to some of these questions in terms of not letting motherhood be an issue to career success and making sure that is addressed? Do we have any takers for this one? It's kind of
I can take it because I went through it. Even if my children are not grown up, but when my children were still young, I actually had to work part-time. So I chose to work part-time because I wanted to stay in the industry, but I also wanted to, to give attention to my young children. And so that's the scheme that I chose, being part-time. And I was very vocal about it in every single contract that I was taking, is that, I'm a mother, I have young children, ask for the flexibility. And like I said before, is that, you have to ask, because nobody will give it to you. You have to ask and explain, what you're looking for. And they can say yes, and then you accept the condition, or they can say no. And what happened is that by explaining and by really negotiating each time, things were actually working well. And I think some of the men could understand the challenge that a lot of their women colleagues had, because we could voice it and make them understand that, if you create the flexibility, we will continue to deliver the same, at the same level, and even better, because we have this flexibility. But, because we're going to be happy in our family environment, it's also going to benefit you. So what I had, especially when we came to Australia, where you don't have any, support, it's very expensive to have a nanny or anything. I was working part-time, and when, and because I was on an operational position, because we were drilling and things like that, they actually, the company that I was working for, they actually had software where you could sit at home, look at the logs, communicate with the rig. So the digital part also helped. And it was so funny, because I remember at some point my young daughter seeing me, looking at all those logs and telling me that I didn't know you were doing drawing as, as your work, you're doing drawing like me. So have this flexibility as well. But I think as women, we need to be vocal and put it as a proposition when we negotiate anything, or because we have to speak, and understand that, especially if we deliver and if we are effective and productive and bringing value to the company, we have to put it on the table and bring this flexibility. If we're quiet, it's not going to happen. And that's what I did. I just asked and got this flexibility, and then got, the laptop to work from home when, I had to wake up for operational decisions. And it did happen. So I think it's important to know what you want and know what you bring, because that's how you're going to be able to push for this flexibility, to be able to continue to deliver and be happy, and not be torn as a mother between choosing, either your work or your children, and be miserable.
So basically, it's not just COVID that has made this difficult. It's something mothers will continue to face. Caty, I think there's a reverse to that, because a lot of times people think it's, a lot of times, yes, we focus on the mothers, don't get me wrong. But for those that may not have children, I remember when I was a young engineer, because I was single at the time, no child, I was expected to do way, way more. And I'd be told straight up, you don't have anyone, you're not responsible to anybody, so we're going to basically use you, Yes. Khadijah, I'm not going to make any assumptions here. Those that don't have kids or anything at the moment, what's your experience?
Well, first of all, there is something which is very important that I would like to talk about. It's about the mentors. When it's very important for me, because you have to believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, nobody will come and follow you. Actually, for myself, how I was doing to actually have the mentors, I was doing my homework. I was in some department, but I was doing my homework and trying to find the most influential person in this company, and going, and I was knocking and asking, and if I can sit, have a discussion. And they were all, most of the time, they were all actually surprised. But I was sitting and I was telling them my story, and I was telling them, asking them to be my mentors. Most of them, they were surprised because they don't have time. They were traveling, they were from here to there or there. But I believed in me, I believed in myself, and I can tell you, this is very capital today. this is very capital to have the mentors, that you have to do your homework, because today, somebody young like me, I have mentors from different, I have my first mentor actually, and the other mentor around, they are doing all their best because they see the energy that I have, and actually the boldness that I have, and trying to canalize it, because they know that I'm very bold and I can go through steps and over steps. So it's very important to have those mentors, and I thank them today because they are still with me, and I can tell you, for each step that you're going to do, they will make sure that all their experience will be available for you, and they will be helping you and taking you through the step by step, and not letting you go through the challenges that they face and everything. So as also Mrs. Solanke said before, there's the social media. Today, I can say it's not like Mirelle or as I can say Elizabeth, before we don't have internet and connection. So we have to use this technology that we have today, trying to reach a person that we need and we will believe that this person can be a help for. They say no, keep on looking, keep on understanding. Be bold and try to know yourself and believe it. If you believe on what you're saying, and then they will buy it. If they buy it, that's fine. If they don't buy it, you move forward and you will go for yourself. Coming for the coronavirus, for the coronavirus, actually for the COVID, when the COVID-19 came, we had to quickly switch and actually take our responsibility as the chairman, sit with all the team and the top management, taking quickly the solution that we have to do for the other officers, and based on the rate of the COVID infection and all the problem that is impacting. So we had in Diamond Oil and Gas, first of all, we have from the beginning all of the employees, everybody from up to the top management, everybody have a laptop and a mobile. So you have already the possibility to work from home. So therefore, they were already having this possibility that we already made in the first step. This is something very important in the industry, in our company. So what was important and what was the challenge? It was about the countries, the impact, and to see if we have to truly confine all the employees, or if we have to make it flexible. Anyway, it was flexible. It was flexible from the beginning because everybody can work from home. For what is important is the result. That's all. So basically, we were trying to find, and we couldn't find most of the people. So regardless of the gender, to me, it was whether you're a mother or you're a father, you can stay home and you can be around your family, around your children and everything, whatever you want. At the end of the day, what I want is the results, and being that you're in the safe, as my responsibility, making sure also that you are in the safe environment. So that's what actually they want to have done.
I definitely agree. So I just want to comment and say that mentorship is a two-way street. So the people that are with you, Khadijah, believe you me, they're gaining a lot from you as well. It's a two-way street. But I think we had Oluseun who wanted to also, she's a mother, and maybe would like to comment how COVID has impacted her.
I definitely wanted to answer this question because, like you, Katy, I have a 3-year-old. We dropped out of school. we dropped out of playgroup. We did hands in the air. You know, there was one day, it was a critical day. I was in our operating committee, the senior meeting. I was trying to do that, and at the same time, Kara's mom, could you please help us annotate? I was going wild, and that day we quit. But so what do? And I understand what Mirelle is saying. So in Africa, it's a bit easier to recruit help, but I implore women, please recruit help. There is this cultural, at least in Nigeria, there's this cultural behavior where women are just expected to shoulder difficulty. Like, it's a badge of honor to shoulder difficulty. Please don't. There's no awards for it. Recruit help. I remember when I was pregnant, she's late now, Chief Legal Officer. She came to me and she told me this. She said, you know, I have an army of people who help me be successful. Men have been doing this for years. So please, women, outsource. Your parents, your husbands, you know, relatives, aunties. Luckily, we have a community structure, Africans, you know, even outside, when we're outside Africa. Friends, recruit as much help as you can, right? Don't try to be brave about it. I also want to say the flip side of it, which is that employers have a lot of responsibility to mothers, to retain women in the industry, because most women will go through motherhood at some point, and employers have a big part to play. I'm not saying everybody can do this, but in my company, for instance, of course, we have maternity leave, but we also have paternity leave, understanding that the men too need to be at home and take care of the children. We have a lactation room, which is very important, because if you do want, you know, healthy babies and you believe you want to, you know, go through a certain route to feed your baby, you don't want to feel like being at work presents a challenge to that. So we have lactation rooms. We have reduced working hours for new mothers. We even have adoption leave, because we understand that these days families, you know, happen in different kinds of ways. So and I think it's really working out, because, you know, you read some statistics to start with. In Oando, we have 47% of our workforce who are women. 33% of our leaders are women. And I think about 50% of our technical team are women. And there's a good reason for that. The company is able to retain women, and I think it benefits from this diversity, and probably sees gender diversity by the policies it has intentionally chosen to execute. So I've seen it work firsthand, and as well, I also cheat on a personal level. So that's what I wanted to say about it.
So I just want to there's a question here from Elizabeth Ophelia, and please, our participants, I want you to know we are reading your questions. That please keep them coming. We may not specifically call your name out, but I want to put this to Selma again. Selma, you're going to be our single women heroine here. But the question was that there seems to be a huge problem with single women, especially ambitious, focused ones in industries like oil and gas. The sense of independence seems to drive away the opposite sex. So she's asking, what advice can we give Elizabeth, you know, that she can also maybe meet a decent man and maybe start a family. And I mean, I know we're smiling at this, but this is a big problem, especially in Africa. You have
no, you're right.
Or mother-in-laws to be looking at you and saying, listen, it is not a compliment when a mother-in-law is telling you that you are too ambitious. Am I right or wrong, ladies? So Selma,
you speak the truth. In Africa, it's tough. Elizabeth is absolutely right. But I'd just like to say, candidly, but also serious at the same time, to be honest, a man who is intimidated by your ambition is exactly the kind of person you do not need on your team. I think it's a blessing for that person to not approach you if they're intimidated by your ambition, because in this career, what you need is a partner who is supportive and understanding. You know, there will be times where your workload and the time management on your part will be extremely demanding on your relationship. And if you have to re-explain and constantly justify what you're doing to your partner, it's not going to work. So, you know, I don't think it's a loss on the part of a woman who is independent and excelling in the energy sector. But I agree, it is very difficult. And this is where I think the issue of awareness and education about the gender discussion needs to include men, because it seems as though, you know, men sometimes aren't gender responsive, and it's almost as if they are misunderstanding our ambition and our call for equality, and misunderstanding that to be, you know, a cry for dominance. We would like to dominate and take over, and that is absolutely not what we're calling for. Our drive is simply to have equal opportunities, equal pay, equal, you know, everything that they have been used to all these years, for us to have a piece of that pie. And coming into a company, for example, that like Azinam, which is very small, there are some policies that didn't exist simply because they weren't women. I don't think, you know, from a startup point of view, there was necessarily a need to prioritize maternity leave, because who would it be given to? But it's when you start bringing men into the conversation together with women that a woman can bring up these issues and say, I as a woman face such and such challenge. This is how, if I were in that position, I would like for it to be handled. It cannot be a single approach. We need men in the conversation. Driving them away for us to have a private conversation isn't going to work. And if there are companies such as Oando who have had the pleasure of experiencing this winning formula, it shouldn't be a secret. Please share it with companies that seem to be struggling and not reaching the milestones that your company has had, because there are simply companies that are really struggling. They aren't tracking their gender diversity in their companies. They're not tracking who's leaving and why, and who they're hiring, and does it matter? And I suppose that's also why it's important to have women in leadership, because then they become part of the recruitment. And that makes it easier for us to have that conversation. I'm sorry, I might have, you know,
no, that's fine. I wish this was a Zoom wine party, as they call it. I think we could have gone on and on,
yeah.
but we're coming towards the end. So I think this will be a good time for each of you to give your 1 minute wrap up. It's just been really wonderful speaking with all of you. So we'll go in the same order. Mirelle, would you like to give us your parting thoughts?
Oh, it's already over. I mean, it's been a very interesting, you know, a very interesting discussion, and it's still a key issue, you know, the gender balance gender imbalance in the oil and gas industry is still a problem. And I agree with Selma that we need to include more men into into our discussions, because sometimes they don't know. We need to educate them, and they need to understand, how we feel, and how it affects us, and how it affects as well, the environment where they have to interact with us. And it's important that we're not quiet about it. It's important that we reach out. So the idea of having a male mentor is also very good, because then you have a conversation of, the male is learning from you, is learning how a woman is actually leading, and it can actually help you to navigate through the system as well. So men have to be part of this equation. But what I want to say is that we've actually moved quite a lot. We've gone a long way, because since we started back then, I think the problem back then when I started was more about having a woman who actually entered the industry. The key problem right now is we have women, really coming into the industry, but the retention is the problem. So we have a leaking pipeline, because women are starting to have families, and we discussed just right now, that's when they drop out, because it's so difficult, and the policies are not in place, they don't have support, so they just drop out. So I think we're doing quite well at the entry level, but now we need to focus more on the middle, the leaking pipeline, and why women are not going up and why they are leaving. And I think that's the direction that I give, I push my work, because I know that there's a lot that's been done already at the entry level. We now have role models, so it's a bit easier to appeal to young girls and young adults to come into the industry. But now is, how do we solve this middle pipeline where it's leaky and women are not going up, they're stuck in the middle management. And we need to address that, because that's only when more women are going to go up that those policies are going to come in, and things are going to be a little bit more balanced. And we shouldn't also forget, the option that a lot of us have taken, which is myself, Elizabeth, yourself as well, and Khadijah, is, You know, create your own table where you're going to create the rules and the environment for women to be able to be part of this industry and have, you know, an impact at the highest level so that the industry can be woman friendly, if I can say, and really have, you know, what we're looking for, which is the balance that we're looking for into this industry.
Engineer Mirelle, in my country, we call you engineer. Thank you so much. Engineer Solanke, because I know I have really messed your name, Ms. Oluseun. Please give us your parting thoughts.
Right. So my thoughts are a plea to Africa. By 2030, there's a Brookings report in 2019 that says over half of the jobs will be STEM jobs. Africa, we're being left behind. And I think a big part of it is because we are ignoring the STEM programs. Energy is going to play a big part in the development of Africa. We really need to fix this gender parity issue because women are the engine of the economy, right? They make money, they educate their children have a better lifestyle, and then it goes on like a domino effect. So this is not just about, this is a bigger issue. It's about our continent and taking our continent to the next level and where it needs to be. So my plea is for everybody to become an advocate, men and women alike, that developing our continent and getting more women into the energy sector is, you know, they're tied together and it's something we need to take seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Oluseun. Thank you very much. A pleasure, engineer. Selma, may you give us your parting thoughts?
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'd like to agree with Mirelle about the fact that the middle pipeline is leaking. And at the same time, I think the majority of us understand the reason why many aren't entering the pipeline in the first place. And we've addressed some of those issues. But what might help to retain some of the women within the pipeline, especially from a personal perspective, would be perhaps to focus on a socio or psychosocial approach to the girl child. We need to make sure that the women who do eventually enter the industry are able to stand their ground and face the challenges, because as a girl child, they felt safe, they felt heard, they felt that their opinions were valued and that they were valid. And I think in that way, we've already won half the race, because the workforce and talent in terms of females who are entering the pipeline, despite all these challenges, will be able to overcome and stand their own ground and be positive role models to those who will be coming afterwards. So I think I agree with the sentiments of both my two colleagues who spoke before me. Let's have policies that retain more women in the industry, and let's focus on STEM, because there still is a certain percentage of girls and women, young women out there who still aren't interested. And they need to be, because the future is female, energy is the future as well. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Selma. Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure having you. And last but not least, what's the word, Caty? Last but not, I think I need my water. Khadijah, I left you at the end for a reason, because you know you're going to be the continuation of where some of us have started. Those who are behind us or before us, we've come, and you're going to be the one to continue with the younger ones we're bringing up. Can you please give us your 1 minute parting thoughts, please?
Thank you very much, Liz, and I would like to thank all my actually colleagues here. I believe that they have said all, but I will come to say to in Africa we have a civilization, we have mental and culture, which is actually coming from the family. We can say they have the idea that the woman should be the best. The young girls should be the best. They will be educated to be the best mother, the best wife, the best sister or sister, brother-in-law, or whatsoever. You have to be married and stay at home. So this is changing. It's quite changing, and I can see that some women today are taking the leadership in their countries as well. And I believe that's something that is changing actually, because we are trying to inspire the youth actually, and we need the government here to bring the awareness to those family and those people, to tell them that this generation, those young children, this girl or this boy, are going to be tomorrow's leaders of the country. So the government should work and play the awareness through the family, hands to hands, and make them really ticked that if we don't have tomorrow someone being in our place, educated, and having also all the education, and also having the awareness of all of that tomorrow, we will remain the same. In the sense that we will have our resources, unfortunately, but it will not be us in the local content having the opportunity to work in that. We'll have other nationalities, and which is very kind of unfortunate. This is the reason that in Diamond Oil and Gas, in the Diamond Group, we have set the Diamond Academy, because it's very important to start to train from now on these young people and inspire them and give them the opportunity to learn and to know about this industry, which can be new to them, which can be something that is very much interesting for them, as long as they're passionate, as long as they want to be a challenge, as long as they want to have a better life, independently of what they want to do. But really, what I wanted to say is awareness, because today when I see all the time this immigration, the young people going through the seas and the immigration, and then having mothers and daughters on the boat dying like this, it's really hurting me, and it's really alerting now. It's an alert, and it's that's why we are trying to bring them everything that they want in the country. But the governments have to play their roles as well, because tomorrow they will have the responsibilities if we don't have the right and the good leaders. Thank you very much, and thank you to all the participants.
Thank you, Khadijah. You have been very eloquent. I have to thank my panelists, Mirelle, Khadijah, Oluseun, and Selma. We must have you back again, Caty, part 2. Are we allowed to do that? Part 2?
Actually, so we've had so much interest, and we've had a lot of great ideas coming from the Q&A box and from the chat box. And actually, we're now looking at doing a Women in Energy Association at Africa Oil and Power. So if you're interested in that kind of an initiative, please drop us a line. You're welcome to send me an email directly. It's really easy. It's Caty, C-A-T-Y, @africaoilandpower.com. Thank you guys, ladies, so much for this incredible webinar. I learned so much myself, and I've really enjoyed it. We have webinars coming up all the time. Feel free to check www.aopwebinars.com to see some of our upcoming webinars. And Liz, with that, I'll let you.
Yeah, before you shut down this webinar, I just want to say, ladies, let's keep this dialogue going between us. You know, as we said, networking is very important. Just a couple of few points you picked up: inclusion of men. That's I cannot overemphasize that. Sitting at the table, entrepreneurship. That is another area we really need to push, and I'm glad that we had a good mixture of people that are entrepreneurs and have done well in governments. Retention of women, focusing on STEM, mentorship, tomorrow's leaders. You know, that is very important. And I'd like to end with what you had said, Oluseun: women are the engine of the economy. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, participants. It was a pleasure having you, and a pleasure for myself and Caty to host these wonderful women. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.